we're going to focus most of the day on Israel and what's going on over there in Gaza, in Israel, in Lebanon, in Iran. We're going to try to bring you some information you may not have heard on the mainstream media, although I don't know how closely you've been following it. I know I spent a lot of the weekend looking at videos, photos, dispatches, other things coming out of Israel. And, it's been horrifying. It was just a really difficult weekend to watch what had occurred. So I don't know if everybody's up to speed on this, but essentially what happened Friday night, and I think it's important to point out a couple of things because it was actually early in the morning, 6 a.m. or so, but our time Friday night, and it's a major holiday at that time. I mean, so the attack that occurred in Israel occurred on a major holiday, which is, by the way, sort of a pattern if you go back to prior wars. Go back to the 1973 Yom Kippur War. I mean, Yom Kippur is the highest holy day in the High Holy Days series. We just finished Yom Kippur about 10 days ago or so. And following that is the Sukkot festival, which is a festival of booths or little tents, and it's all about people coming to Jerusalem and kind of like camping out in Jerusalem is a biblical basis for all of these festivals. But that follows directly after sort of what's considered to be the high holy days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then at the end of the Sukkot festival, there's a holiday which is the 8th day of Sukkot, which is a day that, without work, etc. And that's called Shemini Atzeret. And that is followed the next day, and this is throughout the world, by a very exciting, happy, joyful holiday called Simchat Torah, which is the end of the Torah reading for the year. So every Shabbat, every Sabbath on Saturday, at synagogues all over the world, they read a Torah portion. And then the Torah is the first 5 books, right? The Law of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So every year they read through that entirely, and it's a big scroll, a beautiful lambskin scroll in most synagogues that I'm familiar with, probably all of them. And so this is a very celebratory day because they have now completed the reading of the Torah scroll, and they start over the following Shabbat. The next weekend they start over from the beginning and read through again the next year. So it's actually called the Rejoicing of the Torah. It's a very happy day. It's like a big celebration. So this is the day that these terrorists, murderers, war criminals, decided to attack Israel. A joyful holiday, a high holiday. Now, how many times have we heard the Islamists talk about, you can't attack on Ramadan? They want their holidays respected. But are you noticing a pattern? They're choosing holidays to attack. The same thing as with the 1973 invasion on Yom Kippur, the highest of the high holidays, they attack on that holiday. Well, here they attack on another very important holiday, one that's full of joy for Israelis and Jews around the world. Now, something that I'll just add a little bit to the understanding here, and that is that in Israel, Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah are celebrated on the same day. So in the rest of the world, it's a 2-day celebration, but in Israel, it's done on the same day. So that's the day they chose in Israel, that day to attack. It is just horrifying what they did. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the videos, if you've looked at the numbers, but they attacked civilians. Let's just sum it up by that. They attacked civilians. They attacked old people. I've seen a lot of photographs of old women at bus stations who appear to have just been machine gunned. I mean, you're talking about like 60, 70, 80-year-old women, maybe older, just machine gunned. I've seen Palestinian Hamas terrorists taking old women hostage. They had like an 80-something-year-old woman who they got out of a hospital bed, poor thing. And you got these young guys, 20-something, with AK-47s, yelling, God is great, Allahu Akbar, all that. Okay, that's really great. That's your God. That's what's great is you go and you kidnap an 80-something-year-old woman. I mean, have you no respect for decency or life? You notice they don't dare take on the IDF directly. These, and I see this, I really get upset about this. But I see this freedom fighter stuff. They're not freedom fighters. These are murderers. These are murderers. And I hear people talking about the conflict in Israel, the war. This is not this is just wholesale murder. This was just a bunch of people come across the border and just murdered and kidnapped people. Kids, shot children in front of their families. I mean, you can see this. If you want to dive into some of these videos online, you can find them. And you can see horrible abuses of people that are alive. They've got families, 2 parents and 2 of their kids, a boy and a girl. And off camera, the oldest sister, I guess they had 3 total kids, although, you don't get an explanation with the videos. But they had killed, the Hamas terrorists had killed the oldest sister. So you can see the reactions of her younger sister and her much younger brother as they're just bawling. And you can, they translate it, he says, I wanted my sister to still be alive. Is there no chance that she's still, he's just bawling. And the parents are also crying, but they're trying to keep everybody under control because the terrorists are still in their house. They invaded these little towns and they went into people's houses and they took families hostage. I've seen videos. You talk about kids in cages. You remember all that nonsense that we had over here about kids in cages or Trump administration kids, blah, 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 blah. All that nonsense. Well, guess what? These terrorists actually do have Israeli kids in little dog cages. They've got them. You can see the videos. You're talking about kids that are probably no older than 7 or 8 years old, put in dog cages, like in a veterinary kennel type of a situation. That is war crimes. It's just unbelievable. The way, the rapes, they've taken all these women. One of the things that they did was they invaded a music festival. Some people would call it a rave that was going on in the Negev desert, which is in basically southwestern Israel over near the border with Gaza Strip. It was a big rave, and you may have seen some of the footage from that because that's one of the pieces of footage that I've seen quite a bit, and that is, these Hamas terrorists driving around with the body of a young woman in the back of a pickup truck. She's not completely naked, but she's stripped partially naked. Now, she's already dead at this point. I'm sure they raped her, by the way. That's what they do. If you don't understand that, that's part of the deal. They are allowed to rape women that they take captive in these types of attacks. In fact, it's encouraged by their religious leaders. Again, what kind of religion does that? Now, they say, well, it's because, these are infidels. These are dogs. These are non-humans. These other people, the non-Muslims are non-humans. That's their attitude. So therefore, you could do whatever you want to them. That's wrong. That's just totally wrong. It's just horrible. So what you find out is this woman who's in the back of this pickup truck, and you may have seen some of this footage. I've seen this one making the rounds. Turns out to be a citizen, a young lady from Germany. She was a German tattoo artist. Now, I understand she may also have had Israeli citizenship or been connected to Israel, but she had German citizenship. Her family's still in Germany, and she was supposedly at that rave or music festival, which was supposed to be a music festival for peace. One of the videos I saw is at that music festival before they attacked, and it's really disturbing because you can see that they used paragliders. I don't know if you know what those are, but they're basically parachutes with a fan motor on the back of the person who's in the parachute. So, and they're not very fast, by the way. I have one of those that I used to fly, but I don't fly it anymore. But anyway, I don't, it's not really safe. They're pretty dangerous. But anyway, they flew these across the border. So you can see in the video, you can actually see at the rave, you can see these things coming. And as people start to realize, like, hey, what is that? What are all those black dots heading this way?
And you might think to yourself that it's part of the show.
Is it?
Right?
Yeah, it's basically like a Burning Man type of a thing. Yeah, and is this part of the show or something? And I think people were a little slow to realize. Now, granted, at the time of day that we're talking about, I'm guessing they'd been up all night at the music festival. It was a rave, they say. I'm sure they didn't get up at 6 or 7 in the morning to start dancing, but so I'm guessing they'd all been up all night and probably didn't have all their best thinking skills,
right,
in place. But you can see what happens, and the people, they start fleeing as these terrorists start landing and start trying to take some of them captive. And there's one video you may have seen, because this one I've really seen making the rounds, and that is of a young lady named Noah, who, interestingly, her name Noa, Noah, and that's a female name in Israel. And she's actually kidnapped and taken away on a motorbike, and she's screaming, and you could say, and the look on her face, just sheer terror, as these terrorists are kidnapping her and taking her away. Now, who knows what's going to happen to her, right? We have some ideas. It's going to be terrible things that I'm sure will happen to her, and probably already have happened to her. You can see in that same video her boyfriend, and he's kind of being walked away by the terrorists. And what happened to him? We don't know, because there's a lot yet that we don't know in terms of who was killed. You could see these videos. They're just sort of indiscriminately shooting civilians. I saw one desecrating bodies. I mean, really desecrating bodies. I saw one video where they're trying to chop a guy's head off with what looks like a garden hoe. It's a big garden hoe, and it's just so disturbing. I mean, the guy's still alive. Now, his stomach's all cut up, and they slash him with knives and stuff, and he's writhing a little bit on the ground. He's not much left of him. And the guy comes with a big garden hoe and lifts it up above his head, with the Allahu Akbar, and smacks him with the garden hoe right on his throat, like as though he's going to behead the guy. Well, it doesn't behead him, but obviously it kills him. And they continue to just sort of whack him like that, trying to cut his head off with a garden hoe. And you're just looking at this and you're going, these people are animals. Absolute animals. That's disturbing to think about it, I mean, it makes me emotional. I'm upset. The Israelis are upset too. There's so much more here to dive into, because, this conflict has a history. They call it a conflict. There's a big history here. We're going to tell you about a little bit of that history, and we're going to tell you some more about what's really going on in Israel right now when we come back on The Morgan Streetman Show. Thank you for listening to The Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.